The way you speak determines your trustworthiness and the willingness of somebody to pay you money. If you're a creative entrepreneur, the way that you hold yourself, your posture, your breath, your speech is the vessel to which creates your abundance and your expression of value in the world, right? And no one teaches us how to speak confidently, clearly, and with respect and authority. It's something I've stumbled through many times in my life, being a dirty, barefoot, hippie cowboy surfer, of how do I speak in a way that makes me feel fully expressed, makes me be understood clearly by the world, and builds trust with the people I crave to build trust with. Nobody taught me that skill, so my hopes with this video is to give you a deep, holistic approach to speaking. You can even say just like expressing yourself confidently as a creative entrepreneur. So if you're new here, my name's Kev. I'm an award-winning furniture designer, and I'm really keen on helping ambitious creatives develop emotional intelligence, because I feel like that is really what helps us build aligned businesses and leave our marks on the world in a way that is profound. So the way that you speak is a lot less to do, if you want to build trust, that is. The way that you speak has a lot less to do with what you are saying and more from where you are saying it. Now I want to start to kind of play with this, right? I'm going to give you two examples of me speaking, and you tell me which ones are more trustworthy, right? So my name's Kev, and I am an award-winning furniture designer, and I love just creating really abstract, cool things, and that's very like heady, right? And what about like my name's Kev, and I design furniture. Right? I mean, and I stretch those to a really extreme place, but they represent different places from which I speak from in myself. If I'm speaking from the mind, I'm probably going to be pretty jumpy, a bit aloof, a little less present, and less attuned to who I'm speaking to. If I'm speaking, let's say, from my chest, from my heart, from my belly and my core, I'm going to be much more just connected to myself. I'm going to be a little bit more present, probably a little bit more slow, and that has a huge impact on the felt experience of who you are talking to. I've really been marinating on this idea that speech is breath modulated, and breath is something I've just become increasingly interested in as a superpower in my life, because the way that you breathe really impacts your physiology, the state of your nervous system, which is what people tune into immediately when they are in your presence, which is why I talk so much about why your presence is truly your gift. And so if speech is really how we're breathing, the way we play with how to modulate that breath can evoke different experiences from the people we are speaking to. If I want to evoke calmness, connection, and creativity, I can allow a lot more space between my words. I can really hold eye contact just that much longer, and I can allow space for silence just a little bit more than is comfortable. All of those things really creates a felt experience of connection and a container for the moment, right? And I just find that the more space I allow inside of that moment, the more blessings truly come from that, you know? I've had a tendency in my life to always fill the space in the container with words. And I tended to often talk a lot about who I am and what I could do, and there's less curiosity there. So the way that you speak, if we can add more spaciousness into that and frame it more around curiosity and asking questions, especially when you're interacting with potential clients, that creates this sort of energetic connection, right? Because you're curious, you're wanting to know someone, that tickles someone's fancy. You know, people love answering questions, talking about themselves, talking about what they want, even though most people don't actually know what they want, and that's a whole nother practice, learning how to own the truth of your desires. But the way that you speak to someone can either evoke a deep sense of connection and trustworthiness and curiosity, or it could make them close, shut down, and not really care what it is you have to offer the world. So the place from which you speak is really the first thing that is so felt and important when communicating. Then comes the context, I can say the same thing like I did earlier from two different places, and it would have a totally different energetic signature to how it lands with someone. So getting clear on the place from which you speak. And I really want to stress the importance of slowing down, especially as a man, because it's incredibly soothing to the world around you. We're so bombarded with quick, fast, flashy, hot this, hot that I don't think the world craves that, It's sort of robbery. It sort of just grabs our attention and steals from us. I would even say a lot of times it kind of rapes us, right? It's just really intense. So to just slow down, to take a few deep breaths, and to really attune to the moment. And if you're with someone, that looks like looking them in the eyes. Or if you're entering a space, it's really just gaining an awareness of what's in the space. This really has been such a powerful practice for me. And just the other day, I walked into this little office and I sat down and just took a couple breaths before the woman helped me. And when I walked up to the woman, she said, "I really appreciate your presence so much. When you walked in, I felt so calm and like I could be myself." Didn't even say a word to that woman, right? But this is the felt experience that we can have through our presence. And so as we start to get towards what you're actually saying, again, it's so little about what you're saying, right? So the first step is to really just be conscious of where you're speaking from. There's no right or wrong place, but to observe when you're maybe a little disembodied, right? If you're in your mind and kind of frolicking around, that's great sometimes, but really building deep trust and authority comes from more of a somatic experience of being in your body, being connected to your heart, to your power, to your fire, to your gut, all those good things, right? And then, I can't stress this enough, when you're actually speaking, what you're doing is so important. I see this all the time. People will start to especially talk about what they want, talk about what they can offer, or especially when money comes up, this is what happens. Yeah, so what I like to do is I like to say I ask for 50% down to start the project. Is that something you can do, people are touching their face all the time. People are kind of showing physical discomfort and insecurity, which, hey, that's beautiful data, right? It shows where your edge is. It shows where there's some deep work to be done to become more secure in your value to the world. But for the love of God, if you can at least practice, and it might be really awkward, don't touch your face, don't break eye contact, don't look up. People tend to, when they're sharing something really true, that they feel uncomfortable about, will break eye contact. If you're really wanting to say, I really want to say it's going to be $10,000, immediately if I look away from you, that's going to be a little less trustworthy, right? But if I can speak really succinctly without trailing on and just say, to start this project, it's going to be $10,000. Could you write me a check today? Now, of course, it's a lot less edgy as I'm speaking into a camera, but that capacity to clearly state your desire, your value, allow a pause and some spaciousness is a deep sign of confidence in authority and respect in connection to your own self-value. And people pick up on that shit. People can tell how connected to yourself you are, and it's mostly unconscious. They wouldn't necessarily communicate it to you in this way, but it's a felt experience in their body. When they're in the presence of somebody who is calm and connected to themselves, they register it. It may not be a mental thought, but it's registered. And that has a huge impact on their trust in you and their willingness to pay you or open up to you, whatever the circumstance is, right? So when we can learn to be succinct, direct, and add space, we are creating a lot of spaciousness for power to work through us as we communicate. So avoid things like touching your face, breaking eye contact, and looking up. When we look up, we're kind of going up into our mind. We're leaving our body, we're going into our mind, and we're trying to find a logical solution, which might be appropriate. But if anything, if we need to sort of take a moment, this is just me personally, I love to close my eyes and tilt my chin down a little bit. It's like I'm going into my heart a little bit more. And I also just think I really value if I'm talking to somebody and they take a moment to close their eyes. To me, that actually feels like they're very, very present with me. It could be different for you, but in a moment of depth, that feels like they're really, really considering the moment and they're sensitive to the moment, which makes me feel respected, safe, seen, all of those things, right? So we access our power through finding the depth that we want to speak from our body, somewhere in your body, wherever your power is. If it's your heart, if it's your chest, if you're a woman, it's your womb, it's your intuition, wherever that might be. Speaking from that place is where we access our power. And when we can speak from our power in a way that's clear and succinct, we're not trailing off, we're not losing the pose is a way you could say it. We're not looking away, we're not breaking, we're not touching our face, we're not covering our mouth. If I'm talking like this, I mean, that's just fucking not trustworthy, right? You could be saying the most beautiful, profound thing, and what you could be saying could be absolutely true, but I might not trust you, right? Or what I crave is more confidence. And we all have a long way to go. This has been years and years and years. I remember when I was first starting my creative business, and I wouldn't even be comfortable saying a number to someone in the moment, let alone saying like a number that felt like it was truly aligned with the value I wanted to give, right? I would do everything digitally. I'd send them an invoice later and just play with the number for 45 minutes before I would send it over. And now I've just become much more confident in being like, it'll be, $5,000 to begin. How does that feel for you? Would you be able to write me a check today? That has taken a lot of work, deep work around money, around my confidence, around my deep sense of self-value. You know, I think so much of the way that I value myself shows up in the value I try to express to the world. They're like direct reflections of each other, right? And so if I can learn to say that while holding the pose without touching my face, that's going to transmit the energy that I crave to transmit, because you are always there's a transmission occurring every time you speak. And to be really clear about the energy that's flowing with the current of your words. It's like speaking to a dog, right? My dog that I'm dog sitting was just barking. I could be looking at him and I could be saying contextually anything, but what that dog is going to feel is the transmission of my energy. You know, it's like, do you want to go to the pound? Do you want some chocolate? You know, it's like they'll feel that energy. But if I'm just focused on the context, right, there's a huge missed opportunity there. And so the context really is the last thing, you know. And I'm just becoming a fan, as much as I love talking. I mean, I've been talking for 14 minutes and 25 seconds or whatever. Probably with a 30-second pause for breath at the beginning. Because I always just like to breathe before I start. If I'm focused on like what I'm saying, I'm missing the mark, you know? Like there's usually a much more simple way that I can express myself in any moment. That'll be much, much more clear and direct. And you can still be poetic and playful if that's your jive, right? I consider myself someone who's a little bit more poetic and sort of resonant to a little bit more depth and play with words, but But still, it's just like we can always be more clear and direct. And maybe that's your edge. Maybe learning to speak confidently with you is to stop over explaining yourself, to stop inferring, and just to say it how it is, Don't even get me started about how this, interacts and rubs up against all of our relationships. That's a whole nother thing. I want to keep this more focused to the way that you communicate in business with clients and describing your value. So yeah, this was a good introduction that'll get you in the right direction to building deep trust, authority, and respect as a creative entrepreneur with your words, your speech, and your breath. If you want an even deeper dive, I encourage you to sign up for the Embodied Creative Toolkit. That's the training below that'll help walk you through plenty of experiments and practices to deepen your embodied presence and build an aligned business from that place. So thank you all for tuning into this. I value you being here. I'm so grateful, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.